Back to the topic of politics, which is what we deal with each time we open the microphone here. Well, just about every time. Alan Kelly is CEO of the Playmaker Systems, based in Bethesda, the consultancy. Oh, I love that. Don't you like being called a consultant? Those who can do. Those who can. Consult. Anyway, Plays to Run. He's with us each week. Plays to, that's the numeral 2, plays2run.com. He basically put together a periodic table of elements for politics, and that's what we discuss each week, and lots to talk about. How are you, by the way?
I'm very well, thanks. Okay. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Very casual Friday, and we got a lot to talk. Well, the big story this week, it started out, and in some ways it has sustained itself. I always wonder how these things are going to last, the 48-hour, maybe 72-hour cycle on these. But this is obviously something that the Obama campaign has decided is the right step for them. This is the right way to go, and that is to attack Mitt Romney using Bain Capital. Right. His background as a venture capitalist and his desire to make profit, not so much create jobs, but rather create wealth for himself as opposed to for his company. And that's the tack they're taking. And for people who didn't hear it, then I don't know where you've been, but we're going to let you hear it again. Mayor Cory Booker of Newark, New Jersey, was a guest on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday and was asked about that particular take from the campaign. He had several times mentioned that he's also a surrogate for the campaign, for the Obama for America campaign. He had his surrogate papers and everything with him. Here's what he said.
This kind of stuff is nauseating to me on both sides. It's nauseating to the American public. Enough is enough. Stop attacking private equity. Stop attacking Jeremiah Wright. This stuff has got to stop, because what it does is it undermines, to me, what this country should be focused on. It's a distraction from the real issues. It's either going to be a small campaign about this crap, or it's going to be a big campaign, in my opinion, about the issues that American public cares about.
Okay, so Alan Kelly, he's a surrogate. He goes out there and he's wandering off somewhere, off message for sure.
That's the problem. That's the good and the bad of surrogates. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this before, is that you're always playing off these two variables. One is control, one is credibility. And they tend to be, you don't tend to get both in a surrogate. Mm-hmm. And they probably thought that in Cory Booker they had a reasonable credibility but high degree of control. Mm-hmm. Well, it's gone the other way. He does have a mind of his own. Politicians often think that surrogates can be, virtual clones, close facsimiles of them and who they are, and they bring them to the White House to brief them, to get them on message, and to do all that stuff, which he foolishly disclosed. Yeah, and then,
I have the message points right here, the talking points. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I wonder if when you talk about the high credibility and low level of control, or vice versa, depending on where it is on the spectrum. In his particular case, there's the take is that he is trying to preserve his own Cory Booker brand, which is to be very much like the brand that President Obama used to get elected in 2008. That is post-partisan and one who looks above the fray of that sort of dirty world of politics. And that was part of what he was doing here.
Well, I think so. It does seem like he wants to say that he's not going to be pushed around. But it is interesting that we've now had we've had 2 weeks ago, and Joe Biden in the same seat made a gaffe as a well-chosen and recruited surrogate. A few weeks before that was Hillary Rosen in a similar seat, a well-chosen surrogate. And these people are booked into they are chosen, they're briefed, and they are booked into these media opportunities.
Well, that was the one distinction they made. The Obama campaign was that Hillary Rosen was really a consultant that's paid for by CNN, and so was not a surrogate for them. I thought it was a distinction without a difference necessarily.
Except that she's on the logs, is visiting the White House frequently.
Exactly.
So yeah, you can cut that finely if you like, but I think that in terms of the surrogate game, the Obama administration, or campaign Obama, is kind of 0 for 3 here. They're not doing particularly well with these people that they have to rely on.
The director
to
of surrogates needs to have his job examined again. Whoever the director of surrogates. I want to ask you about the way they played it, because last week you made the point that even though Vice President Biden had gone ahead and made his comments about same-sex marriage, and your thought at the time was that the rapid response by the Obama campaign was superb. They turned lemons into lemonade.
They did.
This was the response. They actually evidently got quickly on the phone with Cory Booker and said, you need to go back on this. And he went on YouTube and posted a video.
I use the word nauseating on Meet the Press because that's really how I feel. when I see people in my city struggling with real issues and still feeling the challenges of this economy and still looking for hope and opportunity and real specific plans, I get very upset when I see such a level of dialogue that calls to our lowest common denominators and not the kind of things that are going to unify us as a nation and move us forward. Let me be clear. Mitt Romney has made his business record a centerpiece of his campaign. He's talked about himself as a job creator, and therefore it is reasonable, and in fact I encourage it, for the Obama campaign to examine that record and to discuss it. I have no problem with that.
That is now part of a 4-minute video.
Doesn't wash.
The campaign only tweeted out like a 20 or 30-second blip of that, and if you listen to the entire 4 minutes, he does sort of say, well, I may have overstepped it, but I really meant what I said. In other words, it was not really a retraction of what he said.
There's two framing. In our system, there's a column among 7 columns. One's called framing. They're framing plays or influence strategies, and 2 of them that are almost omnipresent, like nitrogen and oxygen, for instance, are recasting and filtering. Well, Cory Booker's been called on the carpet, and he has been essentially compelled in some way to go back and sort of retell the story. That's a recast, obviously named. The Obama campaign is then tweeting segments preferentially of what he said. That's a filter. You're taking the same information and you're maybe, you're editing out. With a recast, you're taking the same information and you're reversing or reordering it to choose your preferences. Either way, they're both framing plays. So, but what Booker is saying doesn't wash. It still directly contravenes what he said, the few media cycles beforehand, that he's got bankers in his backyard and he likes them. Mm-hmm. He's okay. He's okay with that. He's okay with private equity.
Because they invest in projects that help his town grow. He
is saying by inference, he's saying he's okay with private equity, and Bain is private equity. And then he's saying, and it's okay for Obama to go after private equity. Clearly, they don't wash. So clearly he's compromised as a surrogate.
So in that particular case, the campaign's response was not as successful as the week before. Now let's talk about the Romney campaign response with this ad.
Have you had enough of President Obama's attacks on free enterprise? His own key supporters have. Democrat Mayor Cory Booker of New Jersey.
I have to just say, from a very personal level, I'm not about to sit here and indict private equity.
Former Congressman Harold Ford Jr., Democrat from Tennessee.
Private equity is not a bad thing. Matter of fact, private equity is a good thing in many instances.
Former Obama economic advisor and auto czar, Stephen Ratner, a leading Democrat.
And I don't think there's anything Bain Capital did that they need to be embarrassed about.
If you look at the totality of Bain Capital's record, they've done a lot to support businesses, to grow businesses.
Even Obama's own supporters have had enough.
It's nauseating to the American public. Enough is enough.
Word of the week, nauseating.
How do you spell? If you say it from New Jersey, you have to spell it differently, I think. Nausea.
Nausea? Well, the other side of this is that Cory Booker did come back afterwards and say, look, I'm really disgusted. Or he didn't use the word disgusted, but he was very disappointed. He was emotional in an appearance in Rachel Maddow's show that the Republicans were using his words against him, but they were his words and they were on the record. And I understand that that's going to happen when you're in a campaign. I guess, so the question is, all right, so the Romney campaign has responded.
Yes.
What would that be? Was that a recasting? By taking the words and changing the order?
Well, there's a little bit of very good. There's also fun. The real operative play here going on is play we call a label.
Okay.
And, he said the word nauseating. And in a way, he probably said that like Alan Greenspan years ago said irrational exuberance.
Okay.
He didn't necessarily emphasize it. He didn't think that would be the thing he's trying to send out. But his opposition saw it in a different context and used it as a label to slap back, on Obama. So the play became a label.
Okay.
And then, they quickly, interesting. Romney finally showed some real command, some real control, some real nimbleness, and quickly fired back this ad. So, in watching this, this seems like a first big responsive win for Romney that I can remember in recent weeks.
And the Obama for America OFA campaign has not abandoned this tactic. In other words, it sounds like they have a whole series of these Bain Capital attacks ready and waiting to go.
Yes, and this may have derailed it. Because
permanently or just temporarily?
Well, I think, anytime you get into arguments over institutions or institutional ideas, if the opposition is well prepared, you can wrestle to a tie.
Mm-hmm.
We did this years ago in Silicon Valley, arguing over fat clients and thin servers, if you care. Big, beefy PCs versus big, beefy networks. Well, there's two different viewpoints, and you can, if they're both rigged up, you can wrestle that point to a draw.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the Obama administration now, or the campaign, they now know that there is a fairly valid point of view, not just about Bain, but about private equity and the function it serves, that can be played very, very well, and they can be neutralized.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they have been stopped very, very well, and it's sort of like the first big win, strategy-wise, that I've seen from the Romney campaign.
There's an interesting look. Jim Vandehei and Mike Allen, writing in Politico, noted that this is the first time that people, I think, have seen President Obama as being overtly political as opposed to Mitt Romney being overtly political. And that is when, for example, it becomes, and I'm not sure how much people are tuned in, but the idea that he is attacking private capital industries like Bain Capital. The guys are good, but Mitt Romney was bad, even though the other guys are doing the same thing that Mitt Romney's doing. But he announces this attack on the same day that he has a fundraiser with a major hedge fund manager in New York. And in addition, the attacks you're talking about, there are a lot of Democrats who are sort of like, well, we kind of depend on these guys to go in and spend a lot of money, and that's what private capital people do. And despite the fact that you try to paint Mitt Romney with one brushstroke and the rest of venture capitalists with another one, I'm not sure that works very well.
They will be able to show that Mitt Romney, playing within the rules and the institutions, was a real master of that particular game, and he can portray himself as being a businessman, but he can also portray himself as being very focused, very systems oriented, very dogged. And he can ultimately now use this to advantage, because now he's got people like surrogates, Democratic, capital D surrogates, like Cory Booker, saying they're nauseated, at the fact that people are making fun of private equity.
Yeah, and finally, we're almost out of time, but this almost reminds me of 2008 in this sense. The argument that the president, then Senator Barack Obama, put out was it was not about experience, it was about judgment. The ability to make the right judgment. And in a way, you can sort of turn that around with Mitt Romney. It's like, it's not necessarily about whether I have the experience. I'm pointing to my experience, understanding what the business community needs, but I've got the right judgment to take this job.
Yeah, they are all but saying that, you can't have a guy from private equity certainly couldn't possibly be president of the United States. Well, the obvious rejoinder to that will be that, you were pretending or saying that a professor and a community organizer couldn't possibly or could possibly be the president of the United States. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So I think they're on very thin ice if they try to push that.
Well, we'll see how it plays out. The plays to win. Go to there. Plays to the numeral 2, plays to win.
Plays to run.
I'm sorry, .com, plays to run.com. But it is plays to win, too.
That's true.
Plays to run. I'm sorry. Why did I do that? Alan Kelly with us each week. Enjoy your weekend.
You bet. You too.
3 whole days.
All right.
Sun and 90-plus degree temperatures in Washington, D.C. All right. Alan Kelly, thanks as always for joining us here.